Hey guys, it's Player here. I usually don't make tutorials, so forgive me if I'm a little rusty and forgive me for the audio static. Today I'm going to be showing you how to rig weapons for Fallout New Vegas. I've seen Asaris's tutorial, hopefully I'm saying his name right, and while it was good, it didn't had some errors in it, such as the normal maps and the specular maps. So for this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how I rig weapons in New Vegas. Now first off, we need to start off with our model that we want to rig. Make sure it has proper smoothing. To see if it has proper smoothing, I usually just drag something like this on here. And this one has pretty good smoothing, except for that shell right there. It has little shadows right there, but we're not going to be seeing that constantly, so that should be good. So what you want to start doing is separating these and renaming them. And make sure I got all the parts highlighted. Usually there's one or two parts I forget to highlight. Might be one of them. Yeah, you usually want to do that to make sure that you got anything, you got everything you need. After you get all the parts, like I did, if there's one thing you missed, just attach it like that. Okay, we got our pump. Now let's get the trigger. You Now the reason why I didn't highlight the pump is because I don't want to highlight any parts accidentally and separate those that are not part of the pump. So please keep that in mind. You only want to highlight when it's like the trigger, for example, and make sure nothing else is on the screen but the trigger, so you can highlight the entire thing and separate it. Hopefully you cannot hear my pets in the background. I got pets in my room, so apologize if you can hear them. Okay, it looks like we got all the necessary parts separated on here. So once you got everything separated, you want to take a reference model from New Vegas or a reference model like an M4, like from that mod if you're doing the AR-15 animations. Make sure it's a NIF, by the way. I have OBJs back when my old method, but that's not what we're here for. And I imported the wrong one. Yeah, always put it to Fallout 3, by the way, when you're importing a NIF. Usually all the modifiers are usually fine that I have listed. Actually, what you could do, I already know that I'm highlighting all the entire shotgun, but if the gun's in the way, you can right click and hide selection. That we can highlight that, and right click again on hide all. That will make it much easier. And when you're rotating, by the way, select this up here and the magnet. That will help for precise angling, unless you're working with a gun that's slightly angled, like some of the source models are angled, so I had to disable that to angle them properly. Okay, looks like our shotgun is positioned correctly. Now, if you're working with a shotgun like I am, by the way, make sure the shell is positioned right also. It's usually inside of the of the tube right there. You want to position it right in there because that's how New Vegas has their shotgun shell positioned with shotguns. So you want to position it just like that. Make sure there's no clipping. Okay, it looks like it's good. Now, after that, we want to save this as a max file. I already saved it, but for this purpose, I'm going to save it again. I'm going to name it that, NV. After that, you want to export it as OBJ first, because if you do NIF right away, the scaling won't be right. In fact, it will actually be the original scaling and position from when you first ported this weapon from whatever, like from Source or from any other game. So you have to uh, export as OBJ first. I like to keep stuff clean, so I name individual folders. Leave settings as is. Go up here and go to new and import. Okay, there's our weapon. Now, now you want to export it as a NIF. You leave the settings like this and click export. Now after that we open up Nifskope. I'm actually using an older version of Nifskope compared to Ansaris because I find this one better than the newer one to rig weapons for New Vegas. So unless you want to rig weapons for Fallout 4 or Skyrim, get the newer one. However, for this sake, I'm using the old version, and you can get it right here, and the link will be in the description. But before we start rigging, we want to make sure. Give me a moment here. It's actually been a while since I had the folders. You want to make sure your Fallout 3 or New Vegas directory is in the rendering. Otherwise, it won't show up. You have to have this in the texture folders. When you have this in the when you have this here, you should be good. The texture should show up. Alright, for now let's load up the New Vegas shotgun. Here's our New Vegas shotgun. Actually, it would be smarter if I made a new weapon. Nah, a new window, will it? Okay, here's our shotgun. Well, the smoothing does look kind of bad there, but overall it's good. If requests demand so, I can make a tutorial on how to fix smoothing. I've learned it from Raymond. I hope I'm saying his name right also. So credits to him. He mods Insurgency. Yeah, what you want to do, I should have clarified. You want to go to the try strips and just click this. Just select copy. Click that. Go to here and paste over. That's how I do rigging much faster. Once I get all the parts in here, I'll show you how to do the textures and the environmental mapping. While NSR's texture, I am really bad today. While his tutorial was pretty good, he didn't quite do the textures right. So I'm gonna go over that. How do you do the textures and how to make it look good in New Vegas? Okay, don't know. Okay, there's those. Okay, I think I got everything pasted, so now on to the textures. You can ignore what I'm doing with the source textures, as these are source, so I won't be going over how to export from source, as you're going to see in the video, so I guess you're going to learn how to export from source. I'm going to export the textures again for the sake of this tutorial, because it's been a while since I've worked on this weapon. So I remember working on it before, but it's been such a long time that I forgot what I did. Okay, now we can get to the texture part since I got exported. Now for the textures, I'm using GIMP with the DDS plugin. I don't have the money to afford Photoshop, but I'm going to show you how I export the textures. And I export them in a certain way to avoid quality loss, thanks to Adrian teaching me that, so shout out to him. Okay, this is our diffuse texture. We just go ahead and first export it as a Photoshop document, which is the PSD. I do that to avoid quality loss. Okay, let me open my New Vegas folder. For the textures, you do want to make a custom directory, by the way, obviously. Deleting these because I have no idea how long it's been since I worked on them. Okay, now we got our texture. We export it as a DDS. You only want to leave the settings like this for the diffuse and specular, by the way. For the normal maps, it's a different format. So now we go to the normal maps. Now, the insurgency normal maps are already set up for something like New Vegas, which is perfect. But I'm gonna, for the sake of the tutorial, I'm gonna show you what to do if the normal maps are not like this, for example. So just ignore what I'm doing for right now. So, like the normal maps were like this, for example. If the normal maps were like this, for example, you actually do what I did earlier, actually, so I guess you should have not ignored me. I'm sorry. You decompile, and you take the specular map. So, for example, if the specular map was separate, it should be marked by an S or something. So that's how you know if it's a specular map. And just drag it on there. You don't have to rename it, but I do all the time, since I'm a freak when it comes to having everything organized. Now when you compose it, you want to have the RGBA, so it can compose it with the alpha, and there you go, you have your normal map for New Vegas. Now I know Anasaurus did his normal maps different, but this is actually how you want to do them. Okay, now we're going to save this as DDS. And for the normal maps, you want it in this format. And always generate mini maps along with the diffuse. I have that marked in diffuse. Okay, so now that we got our normals, now we want the specular map. But luckily, the specular map is in the normals and insurgency. But like I said before, if you're download a model off of Game Banana, for example, the specular map should be marked with an S in it, and gloss should be marked with a G. Because if you have a gloss map, that's even better for the normals. Because you want the gloss map to be the alpha of your normal. Okay, now we start texturing our gun. After I texture the gun, I'll show you how to do the environmental mapping. I've learned this from Mill from his tutorial. So, shout out to him for showing how to do environmental mapping. In case you didn't notice, the diffuse is up here, normal's right here, and specular right here. This is your environmental map, the one that gives it its shine. I use Milena's. He gave me permission to use it. So you can make your own, I believe. But for this sake, I'm going to be using Milena's. Looks like there's a shotgun shell in there I didn't remove, but I'm not going to remove that at this time. Now the one thing I really liked in Ansar's tutorial, he does sights better than me, I'll give you that. And I like how he taught me how to do icons, so thank you Ansars. I'd say shout out to you. Okay, it looks like my model is fully textured, so now we go into environmental maps. So when you're doing environmental mapping, you want to have your settings like this, what I'm doing currently. That's how I do my settings. And you want to have this marked. You want to have all of this right here, otherwise it won't look right. And also, this needs to be changed. You can find it on some of the models, but for this sake, I'm going to open up my Tommy gun model I've rigged. Or I guess this can work, since this has it. You want to paste this number on the beneath the shader flags. That will make your normal maps look good, and plus it will reflect right during the day and nighttime cycle. Double checking. I'm going to replace this with the Milena's environmental map. Okay, now that we got environmental mapping properly set up, you just want to adjust these like an NSARS tutorial. I'm trying to do what NSARS did, but I am failing miserably. I guess I'll try to do it like this. I'm going to use my method since I'm failing miserably, just by guessing. Now, since I use Hitman's improved iron sight animations, I just I paste this, and you can follow NSR's tutorial, by the way, for this if you need to if you need to remember this real quick. And I attach prop parent node. And there you go. Now that's set up for Hitman's iron sight animations. So since everything's ready, we should save it. Okay, I'll use this folder and just rename it. Okay, now I view it in the GEC. You actually don't have to launch the GEC to actually view this. How I do it is, you probably have to find the application, but it should be easy. The GEC is usually installed in New Vegas directory right here. If you need to find it to preview this weapon, or not my weapon, any other weapon you're rigging. that's how it looks. Pretty good. It looks like I forgot to do that part. I'll do that real quick. If it looks too shiny, by the way, make the specular map darker and export it as Photoshop document and export it as a DDS texture if the specular map is too shiny. Wow, what the hell? Don't know why it's not reflecting right then. Wow, my settings are correct here. Apparently it's not reflecting right. Oh well. Now let's add the weapon then. You actually don't not have to spawn the weapon somewhere, by the way. You can use it through console commands, and it's actually really easy to get the weapon ID from the GEC. So if you're in a rush and really want to test your mod for any errors, you can just use console commands to spawn it, and I'll show you how to get the ID. Now, for my weapon mod, it uses more than one ism, so you gotta tweak that and GEC if you're like me and making a gun pack that requires a whole lot of masters, but for right now, I'm not going to show that, as that's not part of the tutorial. Okay, now that we got this up, what I usually do for adding custom weapon, I take the MV shotgun and rename it. Be sure you rename it, because I made several mistakes where I accidentally didn't, and I had to fix that with TES snip. Okay, I apologize for bringing my web browser up. I always like to make sure my weapon has the correct magazine according to the game or in real life. You don't have to do this, but for me, I like doing this. And by the way, you do not need a first-person model object. I remember Asar's told you need to, but you actually do not, unless you have a higher resolution texture and you plan on applying that to the model and making that the first-person model. But honestly, it's more work. You're better off putting a higher resolution texture on the model and just using that. Okay, now that we got that, create new form. And I'm going to show you how to implement gun sounds, because I always like to have my weapons custom sounds. I'll probably, for the sake, I'll be reusing a sound, and I'll change it later. That's how you know when it works. Now, unless you only have the first person sounds, like I do in this case, I just adjust this higher, because it will sound a lot quieter when you do that. So you can do that to make third person sounds. Um, 3D dist, I usually don't touch that unless I have a distance sound for it, which I don't in this case, so I'll be leaving that alone. Find your sound you named. Looks like I did had a distance sound. I used the insurgency one. I don't remember doing that in the past. Alright. You should save it often, by the way. And you can get the ID by previewing it in GEC. You have to load up the ESP, obviously, get the ID. And the ID is right up here where my mouse cursor is. You can take a picture of it with your cell phone if you need to when previewing it for the ID. Just replace these two numbers with the load order, what the load order has, which I'll show you how to view that with the load order. Alright, let me take a picture of this real quick, so for the sake of this tutorial. Okay, you can get the first two letters or numbers of the load order, or should I say digits. You probably heard my pet there. I'm sorry about that. Now navigate all the way down, because the latest one you saved will be all the way down. And those are the first two digits right there. Well, I'm adjusting it up for this sake because these are the first two digits I remember from my mod. So once you get the first two digits, take a picture of it or write it down, because you need those first two to order to add the weapon to your inventory. Otherwise, if you don't know those two or know the ID, it won't work. Alright, let's watch Fallout New Vegas to see how this goes. Or how it looks, I should say. Here is our gun. Sights are a bit off, but I should probably adjust the gun a little more. However, here it is. Thank you for watching. And like I said, if you need to tone down the specular, just make it darker, export it as PSD, re-export it as DDS, and there you go. Have a great day, everyone.